when I look at the current state of masculinity and what is quote unquote healthy masculinity, and like even stepping into your power as a man and stepping into masculinity as a man, it's still caught underneath that umbrella of some of the toxicity of the patriarchy, because it's this idea that in order to be a man, you have to have like this aggressive side of you, this powerful side of you. And it's like, what would it look like to be in that quote unquote masculine energy and that masculine power without any sort of violence or aggression, dominance, anything like that? Preparing for podcasting.
I'm shifted.
Shifted.
Drop it like it's hot. Down a gear. My dad, this is terrible. I say this and I have to watch. You ever like, you catch yourself saying things your parents said? Right?
Unfortunately,
yes.
sometimes.
Yeah. And the problem is I say things and then my kids will ask a question. So I go through the explanation of them and then I'm like, no, we don't do that. Like, because I just want to answer their question, right? So my dad used to say, if somebody ever pulled out, like if you're going down the road, somebody pulled out, and he would do it. And he's like, instead of hitting the brakes, he would downshift. He'd drive through them, right? Because my dad always had like a F-150 manual truck or something. It was always like, yeah, man. When you'd be going, I remember, I have this memory, going down the road. We're on M59 in Waterford, Michigan, and a guy pulls out, and my dad goes from fourth to third and steps on it. And I'm like, whoa. And I'm in the passenger seat of the truck like, whoa. And he just looks over and he's like, yeah, somebody does that. He's like, they ever pull out in front of you like that? He's like, it's better just to downshift and drive through them. And I was like, all right.
Like past them, of course, right?
Yeah, no. Like, you're better off to, instead of hitting the brakes and causing the collision, to continue to accelerate through the collision, right? This is, yeah, I don't know, right?
Sounds a little
I don't have any
1970 bro science.
Yeah, right. I don't have any science on that side. I understand the mechanics of why we're downshifting. We're bringing the engine into a higher RPM to give us more horsepower, because peak horsepower in gas engines lives up here, right? So I explained this whole thing to Lincoln, and he's like, okay. He's like, so you want more power when you run into someone? And I was like, nope.
Turns out this is the wrong lesson for you at this time in your life.
Yeah, I was like, ooh, no. So we're not making a go-kart anymore. He's like, no,
Did you learn how to drive on a stick?
I did. It was I probably didn't learn the same way everybody else did. I already knew a little bit about clutches because I grew up on motorcycles and dirt bikes. Really, really bad dirt bikes. A plethora of third-hand. Hey, we found it at the junkyard and we think we can get it to run dirt bikes, mini bikes, stuff like that. And so I knew how a clutch and a shifter worked. That made sense. And the first time I drove a manual, my brother had this old shit Subaru, and I was like, hey, is that a manual? He had just picked it up. I was like, yeah. I was like, hey, trade me cars for the day. I need to learn how to drive one of those. Let me take your car. And he was like, okay. And we swapped keys. He took my 77 Caprice Classic, and I took this, like, I think it was a Brat. It was an old Subaru Brat.
Really?
Right? That had the back seats. I think they went backwards. I could be wrong on that. It sounds familiar to me, though.
So you just learned how to drive by yourself?
Just jumped in. It took me about a mile and a half to figure out to take the e-brake off. And I'm like, man, this thing's a piece of shit. This thing doesn't go fast at all. It smells terrible. And I'm like, what the hell? This thing is a dog.
Oh
I'm over here like into third gear, just trying to go 30 miles an hour. I'm like, what the hell? And I look over, I was like, I bet like e-brakes. Okay, lesson learned. Always, e-brake. And then I actually ended up running out of gas that night. I figured it out. I mean, I drove probably 100 miles that day around the Flint, Pontiac, Waterford, Detroit like area, just out doing stuff, being a kid in the summer. And I figured it out, and then it ran out of gas on M59 and I-75, the northern exit. and it ran out of gas, and I was so upset because the gauge said there was a quarter tank in it, and I was like, the fuck. And to this day, it's the only time I've ever been stranded.
Oh yeah,
by running out of gas. I have coasted into a gas station twice.
I've never done that. I've not the coasting into the gas station, but I've never run out of gas before. I've never been in a vehicle. I don't even think as a passenger before, as one that's run out of gas. But how did you learn how to drive? In general, do you remember being taught? Like, what was that whole process when you?
Oh yeah, my. Well, the first time I drove, I think I was 11 or 12, and I was going up north with my dad to go to deer camp. We're going hunting.
Okay.
We're driving up through the northern part of Michigan, not the UP, but anything north of Lansing.
What's UP? The Yukon?
Upper Peninsula. Michigan is two peninsulas. It's actually the motto of Michigan.
Okay.
Is if you seek a pleasant peninsula, look about you.
Look about you.
Yeah, because if you're in Michigan, you're on a peninsula, which is cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, don't get me started on the Edmunds Fitzgerald. So, but we started driving. So we're driving up through, and now we're like, imagine if you were going to drive like up into the mountains here, right? But it was just flat, wilderness. So you would go. It would be one of those, there's 40 miles with no exit, and it's just trees. There's a couple rest stops, right? And it's straight.
Yeah.
There's no hills. There's no nothing. There's trees on this side, trees on that side. Occasionally there's a clearing and you see the other side of the highway. But it's just wilderness. We're driving up to Wolverine, Michigan. We stopped somewhere. I think we stopped in Gaylord. Or Grayling, one of the two. I can't remember. I'm always getting mixed up. The first one. We stop. We go eat dinner at a bar. I have like a burger. My dad has a couple beers, plays a couple games of pool, has a few more drinks, and he's like, And he's like, it's a good day for you to learn how to drive. I was like, all right. And I got in the driver's seat of his truck, and he got in the passenger seat, and we got on the highway. And I remember like the lessons that he said then, I still repeat to myself as I do them. Like when he told me, you have enough distance to merge in front of someone in a respectful kind of manner if you can see both their headlights in your rearview mirror.
Yeah.
He's like, that's the distance. And I was like, okay, cool. And like he told me that as I'm going down I-75, like 12 years old. 60, 70 miles an hour, him in the passenger seat in this F-150, like 1989 F-150.
Is it a manual or is it?
I don't think that one was a manual. I think that one was a automatic. But
how old were you?
I think I was 12.
Wow.
Yeah, it was either 12. Like it was definitely before I ever had my permit. I was young enough that the actions and the feeling of driving didn't register the first time I went out with my driver's ed teacher.
Okay.
Right. But it was numerous years. And then I stole a car when I was like 14. I stole my mom's minivan.
I was going to say, I think we've heard this one before.
Yeah. And I took her minivan, got arrested.
That was good times.
That was good times. Yeah. So I was like 14 when I was doing that. And then as soon as I was eligible to get my permit, I got my permit.
Yeah.
Did
your mom or dad spend a lot of time driving with you, or?
Yeah, really? I drove pretty much for the rest of that time. As soon as I got my permit, if I was in the car with my mom, I was probably driving.
Okay.
And we did numerous road trips, like from Michigan to Alabama, Michigan to Florida. I drove all the way to Orlando when I was on the robotics team. We were in the big, like 15 passenger conversion van or whatever with my mom, my sisters, my aunt, and myself driving. We couldn't afford the plane tickets. So we drove. The rest of the team and everybody flew, but we drove down. And we drove this like big old van.
And you did some of that driving?
I did most of that driving.
Wow.
Yeah. To the point that it was like 3:00 in the morning driving, and my sister fed me. My sister was awake with me as I was driving. She's a couple years younger than me. And I was like, hey, I'm hungry. Will you make me something? So she's like, yeah. So she goes in the back and she makes me a sandwich because we had a cooler full of all that stuff. Makes me a sandwich. I eat it. No big deal. Next morning, we trade off at some point. We get to a gas station. I wake up, go inside, and come out. My mom's like, oh, we've got to buy new bread. This bread's moldy. And I was like, what? She's like, yeah. And it's like green.
Oh, God.
Right? And I was like, and I looked at my sister. I was like, didn't you make me a sandwich like 5 hours ago? It was dark.
It turned somewhere in the middle of the night. Yeah. You got it right at the end where it was still good.
She pulled the two good pieces off, right? You're like, if I consume it before I can see the mold,
you'll be fine.
Okay. Yeah, you'll be fine.
Mold's just a placebo.
Yeah, anyways. It's just penicillin. You'll be fine, right? A little extra antibacterial or whatever.
I remember driving with, I remember my mom and my dad. First off, we had an old VW van.
Okay.
Big old van that was like the family vehicle for years and years and years. And
I could totally see you growing up in a VW van.
Yeah. It wasn't a cool version of the
not like a 15-window cruiser van.
No, I mean, I should dig up a picture of it somewhere.
Was it boxy?
Not real boxy.
It was curvy.
It was called Big Bug is what it was called. That was the name of it, and that was the license plate as well, Big Bug.
Okay.
And had 2 bench seats.
Okay.
Right. It was an awesome van.
Yeah.
And that was the van that we took everywhere for vacation, or everywhere for everything. But I remember being in the passenger seat, being able to shift because it was a manual. Mm-hmm. So learning about the whole stick shift from being
while they were driving?
Yeah. So mom or dad would be driving, and then I would reach over and be able to, take it into third, take it into fourth, so on and so forth. So some of that stuff early on. And then getting a little bit older, sitting on their lap, driving on dirt roads and things like that. And then watching both my brothers get their license and kind of go through the whole permit phase and everything like that. But I was always itching to drive. I was born to drive.
Yeah.
I'm total Ricky Bobby, put me behind the wheel. I was born to drive.
Yeah. If somebody was like, hey, do you want to go drive a NASCAR 200 miles an hour around the road? I'd be like, yeah,
yes,
absolutely.
100%.
Yeah.
Sign me up. And because it was always I was always driving.
And confidently.
100% confidently. Yeah. 100% confidently.
Yeah.
Never
not a doubt in my mind.
No, I remember because I never had any. I didn't grow up with motorcycles. I didn't grow up with any motorized anything really. So it was always trying to. My buddies had something, or I had a really good uncle that lived next door to us growing up. They still live next door to my mom in the same house and everything. But he had an old. He called it a tote goat, but it was one of those single in no gears. It's just I can't even think of how to describe it.
Like a moped it was like a
rock crawler kind of thing that you just take up the trail and.
Like a mini bike.
Yeah. It's a pull start on the thing.
Yeah. That's a mini bike.
Yeah. And big old fat tires, big old seat. It was just this.
You want to come ride one of ours?
I do actually. But he got that thing going for a while, and I remember the first time my brother tried it, because he threw on the gas too much and popped this wheelie up over across the yard and fell off the back end of it, and it went flying out. It was hilarious. But I could drive anything and always had been able to. And then got my permit, drove a ton all the time with my mom. At the time, my oldest brother was going to college from, I don't even know. It would have been 2.5 to 3 hours away or something like that. So we'd go down and see him quite a bit. And I would be driving on all of those back and forth. And, and then it was once I got my license, that was it. I mean, I drove a lot.
Yeah.
But also drove crazy. My first car was and it wasn't my car. It was just the family car that I was able to drive. Was a Ford Escort.
Okay. It
was an automatic.
Okay. And
I rallied the shit out of that thing.
Oh, yeah, dude.
It had an e-brake on it.
Oh, yeah.
And so it was so nice to be able to I would drop down into the gravel on the shoulders.
Yeah.
And just go sliding all over town. And I remember we took it out mudding once. And because there were these old farm roads outside of town that had massive ruts from the farm trucks and everything that would go, because it was people's fields where they'd go out and had all their hay and everything like that. So these huge ruts, we get stuck and high centered in this Ford Escort. and me and my buddies are all trying to do everything that we possibly can to get it out.
Yeah.
And we're like finding rocks and boards and branches and everything to try to wedge underneath the tires and all, everything we could figure out. And at one point there was so much mud caked on the tire, and we start going, and it looked like my buddy freaked out because he thought we were ripping the tire tread off because it just started.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was just funny as hell, but drove that for a long time. I don't remember what happened to that. I remember my mom sold it or something like that. And then we had a Saturn, and I drove that, got into an accident in that when I was like 16 or 17.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to the next town over, and it was during winter, and the car lost control and spun over in front of me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love driving.
How many cars, if you could say we could take the Escort, that was the car that you drove.
Yeah.
It wasn't your car, but it was the car, you didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
Right? How many cars do you think you've been in possession of in your lifetime?
Well, if I think about it, and this is kind of funny too, because I shouldn't say technically, but it wasn't until I was an adult, like in my 20s, late 20s, that I actually had like my own car, bought my own car.
Okay.
So I was always driving my mom's cars.
Gotcha.
Or I was always driving the cars of the women that I was dating.
Oh, all right.
So I never really had
that tells us a little
my
bit.
own car. What's that?
That'll tell us a little bit.
Yeah, when I met my first wife, she had a little Mazda 323, a little hatchback stick shift that we drove the hell out of that thing. Then we bought a car together at that point. So I guess that would have been technically.
Okay, so that totally counts.
Yeah. That was a Mazda Protege.
What year?
02 maybe or something like that. Maybe 99. I don't remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a good car.
I had an 82.
82? Yeah,
lasted 4 days. 4 days.
What's been your favorite vehicle that you've had?
Well, so the hard part to that is, you didn't answer my question.
Oh, how many vehicles have I
do you think?
owned?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, let's start.
Let's go with possession, because we can go with possession, because there was numerous times in my life where this is our car.
Yeah.
Right? Like my mom and me would be like, yeah, that's the car. It's not your car. It's not my car. It's the car.
Okay.
Right? So
should we go back to that for
Yeah, just total how many cars?
1, 2. This makes for great podcasting as we sit here and randomly try to add numbers in our head. 3.
If you don't have to know
4,
the exact. That was just a
5,
guess.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Maybe.
Okay.
Maybe 10, 12 at the most.
Okay.
The van sitting out there.
Yeah.
That's like number 10 or 11.
Okay.
Yeah, I've had that thing for, I think, 11 years now.
Wow.
Something like that.
I'm coming right up there with you with the truck.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just like a couple years behind you.
Yeah. How about you? Have you had a lot?
40. I mean, plus. No doubt whatsoever in my mind. I've owned 20 different Jeeps.
Oh, I forgot about my Jeep. I had a Jeep Wrangler for a while.
Yeah. I've never owned a Jeep
Cherokee.
Wrangler.
It wasn't a Wrangler, it was a Cherokee.
I've had 10 Jeep Cherokees. I've had 4 Jeep Scramblers, CJ8s. Pretty sure I lost my ass on every one of them. But I've had just a ton. A couple Jeep Grand Cherokees.
Those are nice. That's what mine was.
Yeah. Had a Comanche MJ for a while. Yeah, the Jeep truck. Yeah. So so 20 Jeeps, right? Just in the course of my life. Plus, I don't know.
What was your favorite? Some of your favorites.
My
Ones
truck.
that you look back on.
Yeah. So my truck that I have right now is definitely probably one of my favorite vehicles I've ever owned. And I love my truck. And I bought it. It's a 2014 F-150 that I had a Jetta wagon TDI that was part of the Dieselgate, and they got recalled. And I was like, well, I got to find a new vehicle now. So what am I going to buy? And Jamie's like, get the vehicle that you want, right? And I was like, okay, cool. I was like, all right, so I'm going to find something that works for us. And I was like, I really need a truck because I had an F-250 flatbed truck. I mean, there's been times in my life I've had 3 vehicles by a single man, right? and we're not even counting motorcycles, right? Because I went through a series of owning those for a while too, and still do. But she was like, get the truck that you want. I was like, all right, I want a F-150. I want the 6.5-foot bed. I want the 4-door. I'm good 4-wheel drive. I'm good with either the 5-liter or the 3.5-liter. I want leather seats. Like I want all these things. And I found it in Texas. And I was like, sweet. I called them. It was at a CarMax. I called them. They're like, yes, we have it. I was like, sweet. I want it. And they're like, okay. I was like, I'm going to fly to you tomorrow and I'm going to buy this truck. And then I'm going to drive it home. They're like, cool. I was like, sweet. Did the paperwork, like submitted the like reserve on it. Like I'm going to buy a truck. I owned the gym at the time and I like called people like, hey, can you cover for my shifts tomorrow? Cause I'm going to Texas.
Is this when you guys were in California?
Yeah. When we were in California. I had like a big deposit. I had sold my Super Duty F-250 with the flatbed and I had sold a motorcycle. So I was going in like, I'm buying a truck right now. And I was like, all right, cool. I had somebody taking me to the airport to fly there and they called me and they're like, hey, have you got on your plane yet? I was like, no. And they're like, we just sold it. And I was like, no. I have it reserved. Like you can't sell it. Like that's how one of the things CarMax will do, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, it was already on hold. And the guy was new and he didn't do it right in the system, so nobody saw it. He just put a hold sticky on some paperwork for it.
He just went out and put a Post-it on
Straight
the car.
up.
Just
Straight
we're
up.
holding this
That
one.
was straight up like basically what they, and I was like, you've got to be shitting me.
Oh, that sucks.
So I'm like, all right, well, what do I do? And they're like, as an apology, we're going to make this right. We're going to give you a deal on anything you find, and we'll ship it to you for free anywhere in the CarMax life. And I was like, all right. And I came across my truck, and it matched because I had never looked at that far away. I was like, I'll go to Texas, right?
Yeah.
Like I'll go up to 1,000 miles. I'll drive back 1,000 miles. No big deal. But I'm not looking in Florida. Right. I'm like, I'm not doing that. So I expanded the search and I found my truck and it was the same color. It was the gym's colors.
Oh, nice.
Right. So the gym's colors were black and burgundy and the truck was burgundy. And I was like, oh, and it was everything else I wanted, plus some things that I didn't even know were options. It is a F-150, but it's considered a heavy duty F-150. It's for like a foreman's truck. So like a construction. So it has a higher payload. So where your average F-150 can carry 1,600 pounds, mine will carry 2,100 pounds. The average tow capacity is like 11,000 pounds. Mine will pull 13.9, right? So all these little things that I was like, oh, all right, my truck's a fucking badass. And then I got to put a lift on it. And I went from just having a nice F-150 to having a nice F-150 on a 6-inch lift with 37s, re-geared, and a tune. And now I'm like, now it's a fucking truck.
Yeah.
Right? And because I've always loved lifted vehicles, off-road vehicles. And I did that to my truck. My wife, like I think for my birthday one year, I got my windows tinted. I was like, fuck yeah. We bought the tonneau cover that I have. And it's color matched. I've been looking for that tonneau cover for like 8 years. I mean, I bought that truck so we bought it. It's a 2014. I bought it in 2016, December 2016, and it had 22,000 miles on it, and they brought it over from Missouri to San Diego for us. And it has 140,000 miles on it now. Runs great. I mean, it's a great truck.
So we got 140 on it?
Got 140 on it now. It is hopefully the last year. I'm hoping to retire Big Red this year.
Yeah, the van, man, it's pushing 260 now.
Right? And how many of those have you done?
I think it had if I remember right when I bought it, because it's it's either a 2013 or a 2014. I got it when it was a year old.
Yeah.
And I think it had like less than 30,000 on it.
Yeah. So you've done 230,000 miles.
Yeah.
Right, in that van. So that's what I acute to, like, that's how many years you've had it. That's not the same. Every one of those miles is a minute.
Oh, yeah.
On average, right? It's probably less than, it's probably like 45.
Okay.
Or probably like a minute and a half on average for the mileage and time that you've sat in that vehicle.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that vehicle is a part of you.
It very much is.
Yeah.
It very much is. I still enjoy driving it. I don't drive it a lot anymore because we don't drive around. I mean, you know, if we're running around doing stuff, we're taking stuff, sweet little Charger. But
yeah.
I enjoy driving it now when I do drive it, which is weird because it's just a shitty fucking old minivan.
Yeah.
Right?
But it's...
As soon as I get into it and like settle back into her and start driving, I'm like, oh, I love this car.
That seat has become a custom.
It's very much molded to my ass.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's, I mean, it's not my favorite car in the sense, like it's not the funnest to drive.
No, totally.
Do you know what I mean?
But it's an extension of you.
It's definitely an extension of me. And the amount of memories that I've got in that van are, you know, immense.
Yeah.
So many vacations, so many trips, so many experiences. I think like, I like driving cars. I'm definitely a car guy over a truck guy to some extent. But I think my favorite vehicle that I had was it was a 88 or 89 4Runner.
Okay. Was that the one with the top? The top comes off.
Yeah, the top comes off the back.
Yeah, it was only a few years that they did that.
Yeah. And that thing...
Two-door, right?
It was two-door.
Two-door, yeah.
I loved that
Dude,
thing.
I'll tell you what. If you find one of those now, they're $8,000.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, dude, this thing's 30 years old. And you're like, yeah.
I found
It's got the removable top, though. And it's like...
Yeah. I found one that was like in really, really good condition. And it was like $30,000.
Yeah.
Where he had kept everything up. And
it could be more than
It was crazy. Even at the time, I mean, I can't remember what I paid the guy for it. I think I paid like $1,500 for it or something like that. And I mean, it was great. It had power windows still that worked.
Yeah.
The 4-wheel drive still worked great. Like everything about it, you know, it leaked oil, but who cares?
Yeah.
Right. It was so freaking fun too.
Yeah.
That was probably, it wasn't, when I say it's a piece of shit, it wasn't a piece of shit. It was just kind of beat up a little bit and, you know, good rust damage around the wheels and everything. But it was so freaking fun to drive.
Yeah.
It was a manual too.
Oh, yeah.
And so it was just like, I could go anywhere.
There's especially as a manual in it for a person who is like, no, I can fucking drive. A manual is just more control.
It's the only way to drive.
Yeah.
If it was up to me, that's what all my vehicles would be. It's going to be hard one day when we've got because obviously the van will go out to pasture one day. And if the timing is appropriate for my life at that moment, then I'm hoping to step into a Tacoma.
Yeah.
And I would love that to be a manual, but
I don't even know if they do a manual.
They do.
Is it like
they do still, but yeah, they're not easy to come across.
Yeah, you have to, it's like a custom order, or like you have to find it.
Yeah.
That one off, you know, here and there.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know like my Super Duty was a manual, right? It was a 99, like 7.3 liter diesel. It would pull a fucking house. It was stupid, but it was a 6-speed with a low. It was giant, but I love the manual. The hard part is I think nowadays a lot of the sports cars and stuff, like they give you the option, but you're not fast enough, right? Like there's no more mechanical shifting and clutching and stuff like that because you can't manipulate those controls, and the time it takes for the mechanical control to make all that happen is not as fast as it being done by a computer now.
Yeah.
You know, and the computer takes into effect so much other things that you can manually make decisions, but the car will also just do it because it's like, no, this is what we're doing. That's why there's like, you know, I think in the new F-250s, it's a 10-speed transmission, right? Like there's a ton of just gears, and they're like, yeah, this is going to make things more efficient, better for pulling, all that stuff.
Yeah.
The manual's great.
They are great. I'm glad I learned on one.
Yeah.
It's definitely a skill that's going to, you know, be no longer, it's just not going to exist anymore. It's not something that's going to be around much longer.
Yeah, I agree. It'll be
driving in general. I mean, they say that, you know, it's going to be something that's going to go to the wayside as well. I don't know how, I mean, I don't know. When I say I don't know how I feel about that, truthfully, if like we get to the point where we don't have to drive and we've got fully autonomous vehicles and everything like that, whatever, I'm fine. I don't care. But at the same time, I don't think that's going to happen.
No.
Today's episode of the podcast is brought to you by Woolly. Most fabrics today are packed with synthetic materials and microplastics that shed off into the environment as well as into your skin.
And that's why we love Woolly, because their gear is made with natural merino wool. No synthetics, no microplastics, just high-performance, sustainable clothing that's going to keep you comfortable any season.
Woolly's merino wool is breathable, moisture-wicking, and built to last. Plus, it's naturally odor-resistant, which means you can wear it longer and wash it less.
And right now, Brave Men Dare listeners, and I'm talking about you guys, can get an extra 15% off. So check out the link down in the doobly-doo. Make sure you use that promo code BRAVE, all caps, when you're checking out of getting some of that fresh, high-quality woolly gear.
Woolly. More wool, less plastic. I'm pretty sure that the big push to go fully autonomous and all those kind of things is still a good long ways away.
Yeah, that's a generational change, I think.
Yeah.
You know, like if you look at even automobiles, massive change from horse and buggy to automobiles. That still took 30 years to go from the late majority of adoption, right? For some of those are, like I said, generational changes. I'm reading a really cool book right now called Crossing the Chasm.
Okay.
And it talks about, it's a business book that I got referred on to, but it's about like, hey, here's the early majority, right? And then these different sections, if you look at like an adoption model, right? This big bell curve basically, and it's sectioned up into like, hey, like when my wife started doing CrossFit, that was considered like early majority. It was still not a lot of people were doing it. It was really random, right? To like when we had a gym that did that, like we were in the late majority, right? It was a thing then. But this book talks about getting into that, and it's just super interesting.
Where do you think JITS is on that scale?
I think we're probably crossed from early minority into early majority, if on a 4, right? Well, it's like early minority, early majority, late minority, or late majority, late minority.
Okay.
If you were to split it up that way,
Okay.
there are other ways you can split it up, but yeah, I think JITS is it's still got room to grow.
Oh yeah.
I think we're at a really cool spot now where, and this is my opinion, that the difference between when you walk into, and I'm going to throw this out as somebody who's been to over 100 jiu-jitsu gyms it's got to be over 140 in the last 2 years. And it's probably more. It's probably close to 200.
That's a crazy lot, dude.
Right? As I'm like doing the math on that, I'm like, wow, is that?
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, that's fucking real.
Would you make a point to go every time, in a sense, when you were out, if you were able to?
So if I was in a city, if I was going to be in Sacramento, and like Sacramento's probably the Sacramento, Seattle, Dallas, and Denver. I have been to, in Denver, I think I've been to 20 jiu-jitsu gyms. In Seattle, I've been to at least 15. Sacramento, 50.
Wow.
Like to the point where like, hey, I'm in downtown Sacramento and I'm driving 35 miles to go to a gym because I've never been there. And I will say, if you're listening to this and you own a jiu-jitsu gym, if you've ever seen me or met me, comment. But every time if they didn't have a no-gi class, the chances of me going were a lot less, just because I am training. Like there would be days in Sacramento, I can think of numerous days, I would wake up and go to an early morning class. Who's got an early morning class? That's preferably no-gi. If I couldn't find a no-gi, I would go to a gi class, but I would ask, hey, and I always email ahead of time, call, whatever I can do to get a hold of somebody. If you never responded, I didn't show up. You should fucking respond, right? But if you had a no-gi class in the morning or a gi class in the morning, I would show up. Not a lot of gyms have early morning classes. So I would go there. And then I would go try and find a noon class. And I would go do a noon class. And then I would go to an evening no-gi class. I would not go to an evening gi class. It's just third class in a day, right? Just can't do it. There's some really fun things that have happened to me doing that. I did butterfly arm drag, 3 gyms in a row. I went to an early morning no-gi class and we did butterfly arm drag. And then for noon, I went to another no-gi class like 40 miles away.
Different gyms?
Different gyms, different associations, like just this was like a 10th planet and a this and a that. And all 3 of them, I did butterfly arm drag.
Apparently it's the move you needed to learn, right?
It was like, I felt bad. By the time I got to the last gym, and it was I'm going to butcher your name, and I apologize. This is like 3 years ago. It's like 709 Jiu-Jitsu in Sacramento or something like that. And I'm probably getting it wrong, and I apologize. But I walked in, and he's instructor super cool. I'm just, hey, I'm dropping in. I'm in town for work. Let's do some jiu-jitsu. I'm never, like, if I've dropped in anybody that I've never pitched. I've never dropped in and been like, you should buy my fucking software.
Right.
Right. So I just went into the place to drop in and have a great class. And then as I was there, normally they would be like, what do you do? I do this.
Yeah.
And they're like, what do you mean? I was like, yeah, I'm basically a paid sponsored athlete. I get paid to travel across the country and do jiu-jitsu with you guys and talk to you about Zen Planner and how we can do this. Right. And they'd be like, what? And I'd be like, yeah. I was like, I'm not here specifically. Like, I'm actually here for this. But while I'm here, I'm going to talk to you, just like get to know you a little bit. And they'd be like, okay. And then I would do jujitsu with everybody. That evening class, I fucked everyone up with the butterfly arm drag to the point that it started, and I know you've heard me say this, move of the day, right? It was that class because they said, hey, if you get it, call it out. Super awesome gym. Like, the gym was great to go to. It was in a small space, small mat, but it was great gym. Everybody was super fun. I had a great time hanging out. Everybody was really cool. But the instructor said, if you get the move, call it out. Move of the day. And I was like, awesome. I called it out every round I had. Then I went with the instructor. And I was like, all right. And he's like, listen, I think I was a blue belt at the time. He's like, I know that you told me you were a blue belt. We're not going to talk about that right now. You came in and you fucked all of my guys up real good. He's like, I'm gonna bring it to you. And I was like, all right. He's like, are you okay with that? And I was like, I mean, don't fucking break my arm. I'm working, right? Like, but yeah, let's turn it up. And he's like, all right, cool. And went hard, and to the point where we got into foot entanglements.
Okay.
And he had a heel and I had a heel, and he wrenched and I kind of wrenched, and we looked at each other, and then the bell went off, and I was like, we kind of looked at each other, and he was like, I was going to keep going. I was like, I was going to keep going. And he's like, I'm glad that we didn't go any further. I was like, me too. Like, I'm really glad, because I felt like we could have gone too far, but it was a great match.
That's cool, dude.
Yeah. But, I think the next thing in jiu-jitsu, this was the whole,
I was like, how the fuck did we get talking about jiu-jitsu?
Yeah. So you asked me where jiu-jitsu is on that. I think what we will find very shortly in the next 5 years is the jiu-jitsu gym that is now figured out, this is how we teach kids. And I don't want to say like karate went through this phase, right? There was the early karates back in the like 70s and the 80s. People that were like, what the fuck is this? All the movies happened. Karate was, everybody was doing it. And then the people who could figure out, here's how you do it, did it.
Yeah.
They were the right combination of good instructors. They were in the right place at the right time for like promotional things, and were savvy business people. And they are the people that owned, 17 karate studios. A wonderful man that I've met, 2, he owns, I think they have 6 or something, Taekwondo studios that are all doing $1.5 million a year in the small to medium business fitness space. They're monsters, right?
Yeah.
Like, outside of your Orange Theories and F45s, they're monsters. I think jiu-jitsu is about to get to the that early part of what karate happened, or what happened to karate, where you're going to find this is how we can make somebody the best version of the fitness part of jiu-jitsu, the competitive side of it, the instructional. Here's how we teach, and here's the path to teaching that is a good combination of how the majority learns and can excel in this. And I think that plus the, do I want to go to this place that I'm questioning if the mats get washed, or do I want to go to this place where I know that this place gets professionally cleaned? Like, these are the way that, like, there's a different way that gyms carry themselves, right? And I think that the gyms that have figured that out, how to manage the community of members, I think that will go up. I think that we will probably see a 4x in jiu-jitsu practitioners in the next 5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's really on that cusp where it's about, I mean, having been doing it for as long as I've been doing it and remembering, I mean, it's gone from, you know, the back rooms of any place where you can scrounge up a space to throw some wrestling mats and do some jujitsu, to obviously legitimate schools and businesses and all sorts of different things. And so I think it's going to, like, I would agree, in the next 5-10 years, we're going to see massive growth in not just jiu-jitsu, but all of those MMA sports in conjunction with it.
So I would, the MMA sports, I think we'll see an uptick back in like kickboxing and some Muay Thai. I think that we will see, I hate to see the upside of MMA.
Really, the upside?
I don't.
Are you not a fan of?
I'm not a huge, so like, we were having this conversation last night, like the closed head injury, right? Like, anytime you're sparring, I know that you can learn how to spar well, and I know that you can, there's head protective gear and all that stuff. It is still the most important organ in your body that is just getting smashed around, right? If there was a sport where we just ran around and punched each other in the fucking heart, right? Like, that was the goal. Wham, fucking heart punches. And people started dying younger of heart punches, right? And just heart attack. Like, we'd be like, oh, you know what? Maybe we shouldn't fucking do this.
Yeah.
But because it's the head, and you're like, oh, no, I can, you know, no big deal. This is fine. And we just don't study it well enough. I think especially, you know, how bad closed head injuries can be. I say this as a, you know, numerous.
Multi-TBI survivor.
Yeah, exactly. You know. Anyway, I think that it's just not worth the risk.
Yeah.
I think that there's nothing that punching you I can't accomplish by punching you in the face that I can accomplish by hitting a bag, right? Other than even the comebacks and stuff like that, everybody thinks that everybody else can fight. What people don't realize is 99% of the fucking world doesn't know how to fucking do anything, right? Like, even how many tough guys, right? Big guys, stuff like that you run into that are like, and people are like, oh, well, you know, I bet he could like that dude doesn't have a fucking clue.
Yeah. It's one of I mean, even if you train, you know, it's like people that even think they know how to fight or think that they know how to do X, Y, or Z. It's like, when it really comes time to do something, unless you train at you just don't know what the hell you're doing. It's the same thing. I was thinking about this the other day. I was at, where was I? I was at McDonald's, and this old guy was at the checkout stand, at the cashier, not at the checkout stand. It wasn't the grocery store.
Maybe it was a kiosk.
Right. And he's open
tough?
Carry, and he's got his gun on his hip, and I'm just standing there looking at him. And I'm not a gun guy. I used to be, but only because I was a cop, right? And I mean, we did a whole episode on guns.
I think we talked about guns for a little bit, yeah.
But so I don't really like pay attention or think about or do much in that space at all. It's not a part of my life anymore. But every now and then, especially when somebody's like open carrying, and I'm just sitting there looking at this guy,
perks everything up,
right?
Yeah.
And
now, hang on a minute, just so everybody understands, right? Yes, you are not a gun guy, right?
Yes.
You don't have a bunch of firearms or anything like that, right? You 100% know your way around firearms.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Like that's the thing that
Yeah.
that's the moral of the story is it's like I'm standing there looking at that guy open carrying in this holster that's like falling off of his hip.
Oh yeah.
And I'm just like the amount of people that think that they know what to do with a gun.
Yeah.
When it comes time to actually go to work with a gun,
Yeah.
have no fucking idea what they're doing.
Yeah.
Like I was just standing there watching and I'm like, it would be so simple to just go up to that guy.
Have you
and
seen
be
the
like,
videos?
where they just go take their guns?
They just walk over and take their gun and walk out.
Yeah.
And the guy's like, hey, give that back. And they're like, guess what I have now? Idiot.
Right.
And then the worst part is I've seen a few of the videos where the guy like takes it and the guy just goes after it and he pulls the trigger and nothing happens. And there's not even a magazine in it.
Oh my gosh.
Right? Or there's just no bullets in it or whatever. And the guy's just like, he's like, now the guy who had the gun is like, I'm gonna get it back. Right. Like,
but that's like anything else, right?
Yeah.
Unless you train to do these things.
yeah, you just don't.
You just don't really know the reality of what it's like
Yeah.
to be in those experiences, to do this stuff.
I think it's also like, I think it's a thing that guys tend to do, right? We have these, I think a lot of guys like see like things on TV and they go, I could do that, you know.
Me,
Yeah.
you know, it's literally this. It's,
Yeah.
it's what I did with fighting, and it's
Yeah.
what I did with guns.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I could do all of those things,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
But then I had to go learn how to do them.
Yeah. Right. So that's the difference too, right? Is that there are the few people who have learned this, not just like, you know, gone through the reps, right?
Yeah, when it comes to shooting and firearms, it's like shooting at paper targets and being a good shot and all those
Yeah.
kind of different things is so vastly different than like
In the
actually
heat of the
being
moment.
able to go do like to go to work.
Yeah.
As you know, with a firearm
Yeah.
is completely different.
Yeah. Yeah. There's I mean, and I know that a lot of people like, especially in like gun training and stuff, they try to simulate it with like, they'll do like 10 burpees, get your heart rate elevated, stuff like that. Tactical games. Marines, a lot of guys run the tactical games. They do stuff. They're like workouts with shooting, right? And it's close to, it's not the same,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, it's like a good role versus, oh, we're fighting now.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's completely different.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think, I think we're going to see a lot more people coming into jiu-jitsu. I've obviously, you know, I've placed a few of my chips on that, that process.
You've positioned yourself appropriately.
I mean, I think, it's a little silly because I kind of came in at the same time in like CrossFit.
Yeah.
I was like, and now I get to bring a little more to the table. It's super fun.
It's exciting.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
going to be cool.
I'm really excited about it.
There's something I've been wanting to talk about on the podcast lately,
Oh,
and
awesome.
it's like I keep spacing it.
But
It's
you
not-
remembered?
But I remembered today. Hopefully,
Let's
Not
go.
Hopefully, I remembered. Right.
I believe it.
But when we started the podcast back in the day, we were like, "What's this going to be? Where are we going to go with it? All those kind of different things." I've got this background of like men's work and all this kind of stuff. And I think I've talked about it a little bit. I don't think I've gone into great detail about it, but lately I've been really feeling the call to, that sounded terrible too. As soon as I said that, I was like, now it sounds like some religious connotation in my head. It's like, I've been really feeling the call. No, but I've been really looking at, and I'm going to start stepping out into that space of coaching men and working with men again. And so it's something that I wanted to talk about on the podcast and bring up because obviously we've got listeners that are men.
Yeah.
And if anybody's out there that's interested, all those kind of things. But I'm excited about it because it feels like I'm at a different place in life where I'm able to show up differently in just the support of helping men through the process of being a man. And I've been also really looking at my own, not my own journey or my own experience, but some of the conversations that we've had around masculinity and around manhood. I have really gotten super curious about how much of this stuff, and even the conversation that we just had about like fighting and jujitsu and guns and all of this culture around masculinity it's just something that is so imposed upon us in so many different ways. And it's like, I mean, so much of it I don't even resonate with. Do you know what I mean? There's so many aspects of like being a man that I think are just the societal viewpoint that gets placed into culture that I don't even think it equates to what it, you know, quote unquote means to be a man or what men are. It's just the perception that has been placed upon, and then we absorb, and then we take into that and think, okay, well, this is now what it means to be a man. So I have to do this thing, like being a provider, doing all of these kind of different things that are like, what does this mean to be a good man? And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I think that's a quality of a person and a quality of a human. But at the same time, I think that there's so many things that men aren't able to, first and foremost, feel and or connect to.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, even if they have a glimpse of it, you know, allowed to feel and allowed to get into and allowed to express. And so it's all the emotional stuff.
I'm over here like, just not expressive. Yeah, I mean, that's, I agree that there are a lot of guys that are not in touch with all of the different aspects of masculinity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that a majority of that would be I think that there are a lot of men that struggle with truly understanding why they feel the way that they feel, or what I'm not sure how I want to go about. Like, it's not a matter of, what's a good word? I'm trying to think. This is like, every human has these different emotions, right? And there are emotions that, yes, we get these emotions, right? And these things, and some of them, you're like, okay, cool. Like, you've got to process that a little bit, let it pass, okay, or whatever. But you also have to understand, like, hey, why am I having this kind of response to this? Why am I so, push a big emotion into this? And is that appropriate? And then kind of come to deal with that a little bit, and then figure out like where your balance is with that, right? What is, what you believe to be in your persona.
Do you spend much time thinking about not what it means to be a man, but like looking at your definitions of what it is to be a man, and not necessarily like trying to understand, but like questioning those, almost like beliefs, in a sense of like, okay, this is a belief that I have about what it means to be a man, even if it's something that feels like really ingrained in you, even if it's a part of you that you feel like, yeah, this is what I like to do. This is do you know what I mean? This feels like a part of my personality. This feels like a part of who I am. This is something.
Do I ever question that?
Yeah. Like, do you ever get real curious about it and think about it from the perspective of like, where did this belief come from? Or this belief that now forms a part of my identity to some extent?
So I think it's hard, because I think some of it is things that I picked up. I mean, so I'll like, just trying to give the example of that. I don't think it's necessarily a masculinity thing as it is so much as a personality trait, because there are lots of different people and groupings of individuals and couples and stuff like that, where people have different roles and stuff like that. I think it becomes more of a personality trait in some things. As an example would be like, just sometimes like, so there's a lot of things that I've picked up from my mom, right, in how we're raising our kids, right? Not necessarily because this is the masculine thing that I'm going to do here, but that's just kind of how it worked for her with raising me and how I tend to raise that way. And I think everybody can be different in some of that stuff. I think the harder thing to look into masculinity is, as a man, how do I want to interact with the world, and how do I want the world to interact with me? And then how do I layer that amongst those closest to me, and then on the outer side, and then, further through? And what perception do I want others to have of me, to let them know this is what kind of person I am, right? I think that's a little bit more about masculinity, is just having a really good understanding of who you are and what you want the world to see you for, but probably also going into I don't want to say the comparison, but this is what is considered, we'll say, normal, and where I want to fall on that kind of consideration. right? Like if you're a guy that's not into camping, like don't be into camping. I mean, it will be probably a cold day in hell the next time that my head lays on just the cold ground
Yeah.
overnight. Not saying I won't do it. Like if it was if Lincoln's like, hey, there's a Boy Scout thing, we're all going to sleep on the ground. I'd be like,
what if he just wanted that experience?
If he wanted the experience, I would do it.
I went camping with Asher. Asher and I've gone camping a handful of times because we celebrate the anniversary of when I adopted him.
Yeah.
And
which is awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool. And oftentimes what that looks like in the last couple of years is us going out camping and setting up a tent and sleeping on the ground. And I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, we've got like a sleeping pad and
yeah, you've churched it up a little bit.
Yeah, right. Yeah. We're not just sleeping on the cold, hard ground, but at the same time, man, I love it. I love going out there. And yeah, that's a part that I really enjoy. But I wouldn't that's not masculinity to me, right? That's not being a man. That's just
so that's what I think
experience.
A lot of people see when they think masculinity, outdoorsiness, right? And stuff like that, camping. I think that is if you were to go list off a bunch of words that would be included in a conversation around masculinity, I feel like that would be one of them, right? It's one of those, I don't know what they're called, those word balls. Have you ever seen those? Balls
of words?
Yeah, they take, I see them in corporate America a lot. They'll take here's the words that were mentioned the most, and then the word that's, if it's mentioned more, the word is bigger.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, I've seen
but
those.
It's a graphic. It's, but I think that outdoorsiness, camping, I think that would be something that people in general would associate with masculinity.
What about there's this concept and idea too of men are more naturally inclined to aggression than women are because they've got the testosterone and the need to get that aggression out and yes, violence, more
I think there's different kinds of violence because I know some violent women. I don't want to talk about this anymore, Craig.
But would you think, or would you agree, would that be something that you would say as well, that just the difference between men and women, that men have a tendency towards more aggressive things in a sense, even if we just look at it as playing hard or roughhousing when they're kids or wanting to.
Yeah. I think so. Again, I have to pause real quick. I made a domestic violence joke. It's not funny, right? If you are in a violent relationship that is unwanted, you should seek help and talk to someone. It's not good for anyone. At the same time, I make a joke like that because anybody who knows me knows my wife, and I love my wife to death, and if she tells me to go do something, I'm just going to go do it. I don't care, right?
Yeah.
It's that's why my buddy John Ward, he made a comment once. He's like, yeah, the most dangerous person in the world is Jamie. Because if she looked at Ben and was like, hey, just go do something, and it was whatever she wanted, he would just go do it.
And just going to go do it?
Yeah, just going to go do it. So I think that to go back to your question, I'm sorry. I got sidetracked on the
It's all
disclaimer.
good. I'm all over the place with this because it truthfully is, it's this book that I have started reading.
It's a book?
Yeah, it's...
Well, why do you lead with that?
Right? Because my brain's not fully online.
It's because we're not really in podcast mode.
Right. We're recording on a Sunday, which is not our normal recording time. So it's just usually
I think we're doing great.
We are doing great. The book is, I had to pull up the picture because I couldn't even remember the name. I'm reading a bunch of books now, by the way.
Are you?
Yeah, I've
I'm
got
so
3
excited.
different books
I'm
that I'm
sleeping
reading.
a little more. You're reading books.
It's a whole new 2025. I'm in the process, I've got 3 different books that I'm reading. And
you doing it on Kindle?
No, book.
Book?
Yeah,
okay,
I'm
cool.
not a Kindle guy.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in digital shit. I'm trying to get off my phone.
Gotcha.
So to sit there and read on my phone would drive me bananas. But this book is The Will to Change, and it's by Bell Hooks. And it's all about the patriarchy, and it's all about understanding it and looking at it and breaking it down and kind of the influences and the ways that it has shaped and molded both men and women and our culture as a whole and all sorts of different things. And it's just literally taking everything in me and just I got to look at everything differently.
Yeah.
Because I can see so many ways that it has shaped and influenced actions, behaviors, thought processes, the ways that I've gone through life, the ways that society kind of just deals with so many different things. And patriarchy is this term that has a lot of, depending upon how you view it and where you fall with it, because I've got association with that word and with that terminology and all of those kind of things over the course of my life. But at the same time, especially like right now, it's kind of one of those things that, is being used quite frequently and quite a lot.
It's definitely out there more, I think.
And I think it's like, for me, it was just the willingness to get really curious about what all of it is rather than think I had any understanding of what it really was. Today's episode of the podcast is brought to you by Heritage Still. If you're serious about quality in the kitchen, it's time to check out Heritage Still. All their cookware is handcrafted right here in Tennessee.
Heritage Steel isn't just another cookware brand. This is American craftsmanship at its finest, using high-quality, multi-clad stainless steel to give you unmatched durability, precision, and performance. Whether you're searing, sauteing, simmering, or good old-fashioned pan frying, these pans were built to last for generations.
Their cookware is safe for any cooking surface. It's easy to clean, and every piece comes with a lifetime warranty.
And right now, Brave Men Dare listeners, I'm talking to you. You guys can save an extra 10% off. Go over to www.heritagesteel.us/brave. Make sure you use the promo code BRAVE, all caps, to get that extra 10% off at checkout. Upgrade your kitchen with a cookware that's going to stand the test of time.
Heritage Still, chef-grade cookware for less. Because my framework and understanding of what I'm realizing now is just a very, simplified version of...
Now you got, what is your current definition?
It's not going to be good. Like, it's going to be a cluster.
If I were to be like, of the patriarchy.
So my current working definition / understanding as I'm trying to unpack all of it is, if I was going to define patriarchy, it's just it's the society that we live in that has been molded in a sense by men and the way that men have structured everything to serve them and set up life in such a way where it is in service to them, and they're the most important thing, and then everything after the fact. So men are at the top of the food chain, and then everything else is after them. So it's this really kind of truthfully, it's kind of a shitty, not even kind of, it's a really shitty way to kind of set up a society and a structure. The idea that at the, especially if we're looking at everybody's equal and everybody's on the same level and all those kind of things, which the patriarchy doesn't obviously take into consideration. So it's men and then everybody else. And it's sad. Truthfully, it's just really sad. I think a lot about myself as a little boy and all the things that I was going through. I've got these two pictures that I use. One of them is when I was 5 and one of them is when I was 6.
Okay.
And the one that I have when I was 5, they're just the pictures from school, the school picture, right? The one that I have when I was 5, I've got this big bright smile. These are pictures that I in the morning. I've got them in my journal, so I'm looking at them every day and everything like that.
Talking to little Craig.
Yeah. And 5-year-old Craig has just the brightest smile on his face.
Okay.
He just looks like joy and happiness, and he's just, super alive, everything like that. And then 6-year-old Craig has kind of this smirk on his face. And I remember the 6-year-old picture. I remember what was happening. It was first grade. There's there's a whole experience around it. But at the same time, it's just this juxtaposition of the difference between innocence and then having a chip on my shoulder at 6 years old.
Okay.
And so I'm not saying that, something profound in a sense happened during those two time periods, but it's also just highlighting there was definitely something or a combination of somethings that took a bright-eyed, creative, joyful little boy, and then he had to fit into the world in this other way, right? And that's the thing that I think a lot about is it's how has that impacted not just men, but everybody, men, women, everybody that exists? Because it's, in this book, it's not just about how impactful the patriarchy has been on women, but not how detrimental it's been for men to be in that society, but also how women, obviously, right, I'm doing a terrible job explaining this.
No,
book. But it's because it's not just like there's women that are also perpetuating patriarchal concepts, ideas. Do you know what I mean? All these kind of different things, because it's just the program that we've all been programmed with because of the culture and society that we live in. So it really is just sparking all of these things that I'm trying to figure out and unpack and question. And I don't have a full conceptual like understanding yet of all of it. It's just peeling back all of these layers and really like recognizing like it's fucked up. Like it's just fucked up on so many different levels. And there's things that I can't even really like speak individually to anything right now and say like this thing that I used to think, because I'm flooded with just so much information and awareness to some extent that it's like, it's hard to make sense of it all. But it's sad. Like, it's just sad to think about what gets shut off in little boys and what gets programmed into them and how they have to now move forward in life in order to survive. And a lot of the things in the book, she talks about it too, where it's not necessarily like, I mean, yes, there's obviously isolated stories and incidences where you're going to be specifically told something or programmed with something from, your parents or from a father figure or something like that. But a lot of times it's the other boys at school that are enforcing these same kind of like dominating ideas and beliefs around masculinity and what it means to be a boy and what it means to be a man and how we have to shut all these other things down. And like, you definitely don't want to be feminine in any way. All these other kind of things about emotions and all this kind of stuff. It's a lot.
Yeah.
But I think there's far more awareness that obviously needs to be had. But when I see when I look at this, not the realm, when I look at the current state of like masculinity and what is quote unquote healthy masculinity, and like even stepping into your power as a man and stepping into masculinity as a man, I think it's still caught underneath that umbrella of some of the toxicity of the patriarchy, because it's this idea that in order to be a man, you have to have like this, like I was saying earlier, like this aggressive side of you, this powerful side of you. And it's like, what would it look like to be in that quote unquote masculine energy and that masculine power without any sort of violence or aggression, dominance, anything like that?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think that it is, I don't necessarily agree with all that.
Yeah.
I think that to really put a lot of like, we can look at back in history and try to learn from history, but I'm not mad about the things that happened, because everything that had happened got us to where we are right now. And this is the best version of humanity, like as a whole. I think that there are areas that we are probably worse in. I mean, I think about this on a worldwide scale, not just like the United States or the town or whatever, like on a worldwide scale. I think that as a species, we are evolving, and it's one thing to look back and go like, yeah, like 100 years ago, the man was more in charge, and that was not right. 100 years ago, there's a really good chance that you could get shot just because in town, right? Like in a lot of parts of the United States, even in like the 1900s, like early 1900s, let's go like 1905 in New York City, people got shot all the fucking time.
Yeah.
Right? People got murdered all the fucking time. Go back to the like mid 1800, the expansion into the West.
That show, right? American Primeval.
Yeah,
I finally finished it.
Yeah.
I was going to talk to you about that too, where it was like, I mean, that shows a perfect case of just
murder.
Shit. Yeah.
Right. So why is it 150 years ago? Why was it the man that was in charge? Because he had the best chance of defending physically the family. And as much as we want to get into like the roles of all that or whatever,
in my opinion, it's a scientific fact. Men in general are bigger, stronger, faster human beings, right? Like there's a 2-second difference, I believe, between the fastest man in a 100-meter sprint and the fastest woman, right? There's no amounts of equality or anything that we could do to make that woman run that men's race and win, right? It's just men are faster, they're bigger, they're stronger. It's just a genetic thing. And it's the same as if we look at different species, right? The lioness does most of the hunting, right? The lion's still bigger, right? It's just different species, different bodies. But I think that when we look back at them, we're like, yeah, well, that's terrible. Well, that's what they were dealing with then, right? Why was there, and you can see, I think about the patriarchy, matriarchy, because there's, I think, different times in even our most recent 30, 40 years where the woman's influence, I think, has steered more, right?
Boy, I don't know, dude. 30, 40 years? I mean, I don't think we've ever had a time in our history where...
I don't want to say a difference of this is the predominant or anything like that, but the direction that things are moving, because it's, for me, it's a constant moving graph, right? If you were to go, here's the middle, even, it's always been on the top, right? But I think it's changed its trajectories a few times. It's never just done a straight line. It goes up and down different times, right? Even like right now, there is more conversation and equalness in relationships today than there were 30 years ago.
Yeah, but I think that, I mean, I agree there's more than there was like 30 years ago, but I think the vast majority of relationships, and it's not even like because people are necessarily like looking at them in a way of like, you know, the dichotomy of what's typically a man's role or typically a woman's role. I think it's because we, like, our definition of what relationships are is influenced and shaped so subconsciously by that programming of patriarchy that we can't even really look at it, that it's not even close to equal.
Totally. I agree that it's not close
like
to equal.
It's kind of this stuff we've joked about where it's like, you know, Steph's doing all the laundry and shit. And I'm not.
I agree, right? But I think that there are more men today that change cycle. Let's use laundry as an example. There are more men today that help with the laundry than there were 10 years ago, right? There are more stay-at-home dads today than there were 10 years ago. That is a society that is evolving, right? And yes, we were raised with this image of the family roles and stuff like that. That doesn't mean that's how we are today. We were raised with that, but through our enlightenment or evolution as an adult, as a human being, as a consciousness on this planet, we have altered that, right? And we are constantly trying to alter that. I got hit with a big one last night. Jamie came in after we put the kids to bed, and Nora looked at Jamie and said, "Daddy doesn't smile when he looks at me and Lincoln." Right? Ooh. And this is a for me thing. And she said, when Daddy looks at you, he smiles. Why doesn't Daddy smile when he looks at me? Now, that's the perception that my daughter and son probably have had. That's on me, because it's not that when I look at them, I'm not happy. I'm overwhelmed with joy on a regular basis with my children. I don't show my emotion. That is probably something that is left over from, you know, how I was raised a little more, right? And what I was during those nurturing years, this is what the man's role looks like. I am making the conscious effort to make that change. So I am evolving and I am changing that dichotomy of relationships within this space at the best rate that we can do humanly possible. I mean, think about if we look back in history in the last 200 years, all these different, we had the Industrial Revolution, right? We had the Civil Rights Movement, right? We are going through another one of those things right now, but that doesn't mean that we just I'm not super sad about how the nuclear family looked 50 years ago, because that's what was going, that's where we were at as a society, right? I think there are some areas that are regressing, but I think that for the most part,
across the people that I have interacted with as an adult, things are moving in that direction. Things are moving in a more positive direction, right? And I think we occasionally run into people in different, especially here, it's, you know, we're rural Tennessee, you know, that for a fact, we know you know, most people I probably figure it takes longer for some of those things to happen here, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not in you interact with less people on a day-to-day basis when you live in rural America than you do when you live in a big city. When you live in LA, San Diego, New York, Chicago, and you live within that like metropolitan, you might on an average day interact with 25 to 150 people. You're just you're open to more. And that changes things faster, right? That's why like if you look back, I want to say it's like it's like 1939 or something like that. New York City, glamorous, right? You look at that same time frame in like Indianapolis, or not a big city, but like a smaller like space, or more rural America, and they're vastly different.
Yeah.
Right? Like just vastly different. That is, I think, equalizing more now because of the technological advances we've had. We all watch the same shows now, so
It's still kind of the same though.
It
Like
is,
if
but it
you
just
use
takes
that
more time.
example, I mean, I hadn't ever thought about it that way, but like you take, you know, like when was the Dust Bowl and the Great Depression? I mean, that's like early 30s, right?
So that was
Like 1930-ish.
Well, stock market crash was December something 20 or 1929, I think.
Okay.
So early 30s was
Okay.
Dust
I
Bowl.
mean, if we just say 100 years ago,
yeah,
right?
100 years ago.
100 years ago in 1925,
Yeah.
you could go to New York and it would it's not to say that it would look, you know, similar to what it looks like today, but the difference between, you know, rural America versus New York City 100 years ago is pretty much the same that it is today, where you've got, because think about some of the places that we know here in Tennessee where people are living in rural areas of this state that we live in that isn't that much different than the way that they were living 100 years ago.
I think I would disagree on this. If I cannot think of a technological amenity that someone in New York City has that they do not have for the majority or the understanding of here in rural America.
Well, even if we just eliminate like technology in a sense, so we're not thinking about like cell phones or cars or computers.
But that's part of advancement, right?
Yeah, but like, because I mean, there's like that's the thing that's blown me away since we've been here in Tennessee. Like I saw poverty in Utah, obviously, where we grew up, and I knew what poor was back then. But there's a whole other level of poverty that exists in this state that is like 5 notches down, 10 notches down. Do you know what I mean? There's people that don't have running water. There's people that don't have electricity. There's people that, do you know what I mean? And you think, well, we've got cell phones and we've got all this technology and internet access. There's a lot of people in this state that don't have access to any of those things. And it's not even a matter of like, they're not seeking access to those things either. They're still living day in and day life the same way that they would be living it if it was 100 years ago, where they might have the one vehicle. They might, you know, be living off of food stamps, support, whatever the case may be, where
maybe I still think that
you might go to the city and have that experience and interact a little bit, but then you're going to come back to your home, back to where you live, back to the small rural community where, I mean, it's so similar.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think there's really as many people who really don't have access to electricity. Running water is slightly different because that's a geographical, where is there water, right? Does it make sense to run water this far, right? Like our neighbors next to us, right? Like on the more Riceville side, they are not on city water. We're the last of the line on city water because it just doesn't make sense to run it that much further. But I think that there is, like, those people all have wells, right? They have some source of running water. But I think that even if you were to go into those, like, they all know what all these things are. I bet the person let's go with majority. I'm going to go with 99%. 99% of adults in the state of Tennessee have a cell phone. Minus, let's just go ahead and throw out like prisoners and insane people.
Yeah.
Right? I think 99% of adults have a cell phone. Because I can tell you that I have, as somebody who goes around and buys shit from shady motherfuckers on the regular, my wife will attest to this, she has been very unhappy with some of the, I'm like, hey, can we just run over here real quick? This guy's just going to leave this tire out in the back of this abandoned car. I'm going to throw $30 in the ashtray and we're going to be gone. And she's like, where the fuck are you taking me? Right? We're in a holler. That guy had a Facebook, right? He was totally fine to get on Facebook and fucking sell me something. That guy has access to fucking Netflix. He's got some kind of access to the world, and we're just seeing it's slower to change with just the number of people we run into and stuff like that. But like, I think that there is probably less than 0.01% of the population of the United States that hasn't interacted with a digital screen on at least a weekly basis.
Yeah.
Right. And if we go back and look, like that was vastly different from the differences between those. That's for that kind of realm. I think there are differences in what are morals and values. Those are more generational changes that they're going to happen faster in metropolitans because you're interacting with more and more people, more and more ideas. There's a vacuum of new ideas and thoughts and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that's probably more to the point of what I'm trying to get across is it's like there's such a, especially when you look at like social media and being online and everything like that, there's like this big understanding that we're all kind of like aware of the same things and paying attention to the same things. And like culture as a whole is on this massive level of technological advancements. And now we've got AI and we've got all these huge, massive things that are taking place. And I think it's really important to remember that even though that might be maybe the majority of society, right? There's still a huge minority of people that aren't on that same page, that aren't thinking about those same things, that aren't experiencing those same things, that aren't, not just benefiting from those same things, but are very much still in a thought process that looks 20, 30, 40 years ago and across the board in regards to anything, whether we're talking about the patriarchy, whether we're talking about, concepts and ideas around religion or rights or all of these kind of different things. And that's, to me, it's just like, I'm curious about how do we not affect in a sense, but like, I think at the end of the day that we just have to wait for those generations to pass is like, it sucks. Like, I don't like the idea that we have to wait for old white men to die in order for, things to become much better and much more equal for everybody else that exists on this planet. Because I don't really think it's that equal at this point in time. I think the illusion is
I don't think
that
it's
it
equal.
is.
No.
And it's pretty sad to sit and...
But it's the best that we can do.
I don't think it is.
But like you can't look forward at this and say, here's how we're going to be. Like, there's the goal. I can't look back at how far I've come and said I could do any better because you can't change it, right? So if this is how far we came further in the last 10 years than we did the 20 years before that and the 40 years before that, right? We're always getting faster, and that's improvement. So to look at it and be like, it's not fast enough. Like, how many people are in the United States of America? The United States of America, right? 375 million people. And you want to change minds of a vast majority of those? Like, these things take time, right? I mean, think about it this way, and to go back to the differences, New York and rural America and, today. And it took, don't quote me on this, I've heard that it took over a year for the stock market crash to affect rural America.
Yeah.
Right? Months before anyone even knew what was going on because of just how slow
stuff like that happened, right? There's I think it's the war of God, I can't remember which one it was. There was a war. The first time that the guy showed up to draft, I think it was, anyways, there's how long it takes for information to travel, right? Mm-hmm. So it took over a year for that information to travel. 100 years ago, it took over a year for that information to travel. There is not an competent adult in the United States right now that does not know what Doge is.
I mean,
that's only 3 months.
I don't know. I don't know what it stands for. I know that it's something that Elon's rolled out.
Cool. You've heard of it.
Yeah.
You have awareness of something about it.
Yeah, I don't know if Doge is the greatest example. I think there's tons of people that have no idea what that is.
I think that everybody has heard that term.
I don't think so. Let's poll everybody.
Oh yeah. I'll go with not everybody, but I'm saying major majority, like 98%.
I don't think so, dude. I think this is the big misnomer, is that everybody thinks that we're all on the same page with stuff like this. And I think the reality is, even though people might have access to the internet, might have cell phones, the fact is they're not using it for that. You know what I mean? They're not using it to look at things like that. They're not looking. The idea that we're all consuming the same content or information, or that we all care about the same things because we're on this planet together. The truth of it is, we really don't look at the same things and care about the same things. There's people that are watching, just YouTube videos of people playing video games all the time, mm-hmm. or do you know what I mean? Like cat videos, and they're not paying attention to world politics or what's going on or what's taking place or any of these issues and all of that's totally fine, right? Everybody mm-hmm. gets to watch and see what they want to watch. But it's like, I think as a whole, as a collective, as people that are coexisting at this time on the globe, we have to remember that not everybody, not just sees things the way that we see them, but also I think it's limiting to think that people don't understand these things or see these things and whatever these things are that we're talking about, right? Mm-hmm. Because I think the truth of it is they just don't. I don't think that they're looking at it. I don't think it's...
I don't know.
Because so many people are in survival. And when you're in survival, you're not taking into consideration all of these other things.
I think that, how many people... what percentage of the United States do you think doesn't know Donald Trump is the president right now?
That's probably very low, right? Probably, I don't know, less than what, 3%, less than 2%?
I would go with less than 0.1%.
Yeah,
other than let's rule out children, right?
Yeah.
But 18 and up.
Yeah.
It's there's so much information out there, and I agree that we're not all watching the minute small things, but I think the overall picture of things, right? I think most people have got an understanding of. With the people I talk to on a regular basis, just the amount of people that are not even up to date, but just have a minute awareness of, bless you.
Thank you.
Of what's going on in the world. I think it's pretty high. Do you have any awareness to people fucking up Teslas and Tesla dealerships right now?
I saw that the other day.
Yeah. Right?
Which I think it's hilarious.
Right.
So funny. This is going to be the fix.
I think it's super funny that you're attacking a car that has 9 cameras on it in Sensory mode. It's the most secure vehicle, right, that's ever been produced, and we're going to go key it.
Yeah, all of it's so silly right now. And it always comes back to me, for me, all of these things that, back to the patriarchy and trying to understand masculinity in a better way and in a deeper way. It's that's all that I can do. I can't do anything else more than that, right? I can only do the things that are in front of me. I can only do my own internal work and heal through the things that I need to heal through and look at the things that I need to look at or that I want to look at in order to evolve and become a better version of myself, a better functioning member of society, so that the way that I interact with everybody and move through the world is in a more loving, compassionate way. Mm-hmm. That's all any of us can do at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
We can't solve world hunger and world peace, even though it probably could be solved real fucking easy. But yet, we can't.
I thought Elon Musk solved world hunger.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like there's probably still people out there that are hungry.
I mean, so I thought, wasn't that the story like 4 years ago?
Oh, that he figured it out?
No. He, like, UNICEF said something about how much it would cost to end world hunger. Or he said, they were like, you're such a wealthy person, you should help us end world hunger. And he said, cool, how much?
Mm-hmm.
And they said, what do you mean? He said, how much to solve world hunger? And they're like, well, we don't, if you can come to me with a figure, let me know.
Yeah.
Come with a proposal. And they came to him and it was like $5.6 billion. He wrote him a check.
I don't know. We got to fact check that.
Can I fact check it right now?
Of course.
Yeah. I almost positive this is a real thing.
Where
Let's
he just
go.
wrote a check for $5.6 billion.
It was something like that. Elon Musk world hunger. Musk pledged $6 billion to solve world hunger, but gave it to his own foundation instead. That's from Truth Out. So I could be 100% wrong on this. In 2001, Elon Musk challenged the UN's World Food Program to present a $6 billion plan to end world hunger, and he donated the money. They responded to the proposal to help 42 million people in 43 countries facing famine. However, Musk never donated the money. Instead, the financial documents revealed he gave it to his own foundation. So, yeah, it looks like that's not a real thing. I'm glad that we fact-checked that.
Yeah. I think that Elon Musk isn't going to solve all the world's problems.
No, I don't think so either.
I don't think he's going to be the savior or the villain that everybody's making him out to be at this point in time.
Yeah.
I think he's just the latest version of that archetype.
Antagonist.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He's
that
just
archetype.
playing a role.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We're just reliving the same stories
Over and over and over
over
again.
and over and over again.
That's the frustrating part. Is
About
it's like,
movies.
not just movies, but the idea that we have to replay these stories over and over and over again, where it's like it's time to do something different.
You know, there's a song about this.
What is it?
We didn't start the fire. A little Bon Jovi. It's the wheels of time, man. It's just fucking, that's what it is. We're all on this fucking, everybody thinks the ride just keeps going that way. It's just a fucking circle, man.
It is just a circle.
Right?
It is just a circle.
Just try to get the highest score you can.
Speaking of circle, we finished Severance.
No, I'm not
both
done with
seasons.
it.
You're not done with it?
No, I'm super behind. I don't know what it is. It's been sleeping more.
That's true.
So I haven't been staying up late watching my shows.
Yeah.
And I don't like watching the show on my phone.
Boy, I can't.
Yeah.
I can only consume social media on my phone. I can't do anything.
Yeah.
I don't like going to websites on my phone.
I can do YouTube on my phone.
I can do a little bit of YouTube.
But I don't want to watch a show on my phone.
God, no.
And I think part of that's, I do it a lot when I travel.
Yeah, it's the worst.
So I try not to do that anymore.
How far along are you on Severance? Are you at least into season 2?
Oh yeah. I'm like 2 episodes behind. I was 2 episodes behind on Reacher, and I was 2 episodes behind on Severance.
Okay.
And then we're also in the process of watching and F1 started again. So I've been
Is that the Netflix one?
Well, so the Netflix one just came out. I also am up to date with like the actual races.
Okay.
So everything that's on Netflix right now for Formula One, Fuel to Drive, or whatever, that is all last year's season, and the new season is already on. I'm watching both.
Okay.
I'm like everything. I know everything that's going to come in to, like, it was funny. We were watching it and they were talking about Carlos Sainz, who he was going to sign with, what team. And I'm like sitting there like, I already know what team he raced for last week. Like, but that's because I've become an F1 fan.
That's not one rabbit hole that I went down.
Yeah. I don't know. It was the stupid Netflix thing that got me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I shouldn't watch it.
Don't want. Yeah.
No.
It's interesting though. But no, I'm excited to finish up on Severance. We'll see. I don't know. It's
a mind trip, dude.
Yeah, it really is.
I really enjoyed it. We had fun binging it and watching it and trying to figure it all out. And there were several episodes, I mean, almost damn near every episode, especially in the second season, where it was like we'd watch one a night, right? We'd go, we're just going to watch one and then we're going to get ready to go to bed. And the episode would get over and I'd be like, son of a bitch.
Yeah.
We got to stay up and watch another one. Like,
Yeah.
it was so good that I ended up not getting enough sleep.
Less sleep. Oh,
Yeah.
well, you should get more sleep, I hear.
Severance.
Working on that. I'm excited to get caught up on Severance, and I still got like 2 more episodes going. Reacher.
Jack Reacher.
Just Reacher.
It's just
on
Reacher.
Amazon. I like it. It's a big
I
guy.
haven't seen that one.
Yeah, it's a books. I used to read the books.
Yeah, I love the Toms.
Yeah. But I like. Oh, and then they've got the new The Terminal List. Did you ever watch that?
Terminal List.
Yeah, with Jack Ryan.
Oh yeah.
No. I'm sorry. I'm confusing the two. Jack Ryan. I think there's a new season of Jack Ryan, or there's the movie coming out. So John Krasinski or whatever, not Krasinski. Krasinski. He's got the Jack Ryan movie coming out.
Okay.
And then Terminal List is
it
Jack Carr? I can't remember his name now. I'm totally spacing out. But he's a Navy SEAL who's going through a bunch of stuff. It's good.
Chris Pratt?
Yeah, Chris Pratt's the
Okay.
actor.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that new season's coming out soon too.
That was a good one. I like that one. It also had, what's his name? He was in the American Primeval too.
Yeah.
guy.
What is his name?
I got to remember it. I fucking love that guy.
He's
Him and
good.
Peter Berg do all their stuff together.
Yeah.
I can't remember his name now.
He's good. I like him as an actor.
Oh my gosh. I'm so
sorry.
pissed.
Well,
I
listen,
can't
I'm not
remember
going to
it.
know his name. So
It's all good.
But yeah, man.
Let's, I was going to say, I don't remember what I was going to say. We're going to wrap up. It's a lazy Sunday afternoon. And thanks for
fun.
tuning in and enjoying this episode of the Brave Men Dare podcast. Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Go follow us on YouTube, socials, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, all those fun places. And yeah, you can always comment on any of the podcasts, any of our content. You can reach us at bravemendare@gmail.com if you've ever got questions, if you want to be a guest on the show, or if you've got people that you'd like to see come on the show.
Oh, yeah.
Let us know. You can also, like, the best thing that you can do if you've got somebody that you want to come on the podcast is go tell them, hey, you should go on this podcast.
Oh.
Or comment on their content and say, you would be a really good guest on the Brave Men Dare podcast, and then tag us in it. That's
Do you
a
know
really
who
good
I think
thing.
would be a really good guest for the Brave Men Dare podcast? Dan Campbell, the Detroit Lions head coach.
It would be awesome.
I'm just saying. Dan Campbell, if somebody happens to send this to you, we would love, Brave Men Dare would love to interview you about the Detroit Lions.
all things
Yeah,
Lions.
all the stuff, but mostly.
After about 10 or 15 minutes of Ben just being like, holy shit, we're talking to Dan Campbell.
I'm so excited right now. This is the best day of my entire life. I'm sorry.
We'll see you guys on the next one. I love you, dude.
Later, everybody.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Brave Men Dare. If you haven't yet, take a moment and subscribe to our channel, click that little notification bell, and check out some of these other clips. Last but not least, we'd really appreciate it if you sent this podcast to somebody else. Share it with a friend, share it with a buddy, and don't hesitate to reach out. The conversations that we have on the podcast are meant to inspire you, but also we want to hear what it brings up for you. Whether you share it in the comment, send us an email, or call us up. But thanks for being here, and we'll see you on the next episode.